What if I told you that everything you've been told about retirement is wrong? What if the very system designed to protect your golden years is actually designed to empty your bank account?
Kevin, that's a heavy way to start today's show.
Matt, last week I sat across from a 67-year-old woman who worked for 42 years. She was a big time saver, followed every piece of expert advice, and she's about to lose her house. Not because she was reckless, not because she didn't save, but because she believed the biggest lie in financial planning.
And if you're listening right now, there's a 73% chance you're believing the same lie.
I'm Kevin Ross, and this is Plan Life Right, where we don't just talk about money, we talk about protecting the life you've worked so hard to build. And today we're going to shatter some of these illusions that are out there.
Welcome back to Plan Life Right, the podcast that cuts through the financial noise to protect what matters most. I'm Matt Floyd.
And I'm Kevin Ross. Matt, before we dive into today's topic, I want our listeners to understand something. We're not here to sell you anything today. We're here to wake you up.
Because, Kevin, what we're about to share is going to make some people very uncomfortable, especially if they work at big financial institutions.
Yeah, the retirement industry has 32 trillion. I call it the 32 trillion dollar secret. And that secret's costing ordinary Americans their life savings. But first, let me ask you something. Right now, wherever you're listening, in your car, at the gym, walking the dog, I want you to think about a number. And that number is the amount of money you believe you'll need to retire comfortably. Got it?
Most people will say $1 million, right?
Matt, that's exactly the problem. See, the human brain has what psychologists calls an anchoring bias, and we latch on to round numbers that sound impressive. $1 million sounds like a lot of money.
But it's not.
Here's the math that nobody wants to talk about. If you have $1 million in your 401k and you follow the safe with 4% rule, that's $40,000 a year before taxes.
Wait, that's like $2,500 a month after Uncle Sam takes his cut.
Yeah. Now imagine trying to live on $2,500 a month, 10 years from now when everything costs twice as much. Can you do it?
Kevin, I spend more than that on coffee and gas.
And that's just the beginning because what they don't tell you is that your 401k isn't really your money. You're essentially in partnership with the government and they haven't told you their terms yet.
So, Kevin, tell them about Margaret.
All right, so lady named Margaret, she worked as a nurse for 4 decades, and she was a saver. She saved every penny she could in her 403b. She followed every rule, and she had a 1.2 million in retirement.
That's a success story.
Yeah, and then 3 years into retirement, Margaret gets a letter from the IRS. They decided to audit her RMDs, required minimum distributions. Turns out there was an error in her calculations, and she now owes $47,000 in taxes.
On money she already paid taxes on.
And no, Matt, that's the thing. She never paid taxes on it. Every dollar she saved was pre-tax, and now the government wants their share with interest and penalties, and it's all due immediately.
So, what happened to her?
Well, she had to sell her house, unfortunately. So now she's living with her daughter. She's wondering how 40 years of doing everything right ended up so wrong.
Kevin, I think our listeners are starting to see the problem.
Yeah, the problem, Matt, is that we've been trained to think about retirement savings, not retirement income. And that's where there's a massive difference.
So, let's explain that.
So when you save money in a 401k, you're making a bet. You're betting that tax rates will be lower when you retire than they are today. You're betting that the stock market will cooperate with your timeline. You're betting that you'll stay healthy enough to manage your own investments.
Those are some pretty big bets.
Yeah, and here's what's really happening. The average American changes jobs 12 times during their career. Each time they roll over their 401k, usually into whatever investment options that their new employer provides. So they're not making strategic decisions. They're just hoping for the best.
And hope, that's not a strategy?
Hope is not a strategy, but here's what's worse. Most people have what I call retirement amnesia.
What's that? I forget.
Yeah, exactly. They forget that retired life isn't the same as working life. So when you're working, you can adapt. Bad year in the market, you work an extra year. Unexpected expense, you pick up overtime. But when you're 75 and living on a fixed income, you don't have those options anymore.
So what happens to people who figured this out too late?
You know, I see it every day, Matt. People who thought they were set for life, discovering at 70, they need to go back to work. There's Walmart greeters with master degrees. There's Uber drivers that could be playing with their grandkids, but they can't afford to.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah, but you know, it doesn't have to be that way. You see, there's a different approach, one that the financial services industry doesn't, guess want you to know about because there's less money in it for them.
Less money for them, but more security for you?
Yeah, exactly. It's called income first retirement planning, and it flips everything you've been taught on its head.
Okay, Kevin, our listeners are probably wondering if the traditional approach is broken, what's the alternative?
A great question, Matt. Instead of focusing on accumulation, building a big pile of money, we focus on creating reliable, predictable income streams that you can't outlive.
So instead of hoping your investments perform well, you're guaranteeing your income.
Yeah, so think about it this way, Matt. When you're when you're working, you didn't wonder if your paycheck would show up. You knew it would.
Right, every 2 weeks.
Yeah. And that certainly allowed you to plan, to budget, to live your life without constantly worrying about the money.
And you want your retirement to feel that same way.
Exactly. But here's where it gets interesting. Most people think that guaranteeing your income means giving up growth, and that's another lie.
But how so?
So let me introduce you to what I call the three bucket strategy. All right, so bucket one, you've got your guaranteed income that covers your essentials expenses. And then you got bucket two, and that's the growth money for your lifestyle that you want. And then there's bucket three, and that's your legacy money that you never have to touch.
So you're covering your needs with guarantees, but you're still participating in market growth?
That's exactly right. And here's the psychology behind why this works. When you know your basic needs are covered, you can afford to be more aggressive with your growth money because you're not betting on your survival.
And our listeners love the real world examples. Can you give us one?
All right, so let's take a couple, Robert and Linda, both teachers, retired at 62. Um, they were set. They, we set up their essential expenses for $4,000 a month with guaranteed income. Their Social Security doesn't kick in until 67, so we bridged that gap.
How'd you do that?
So we used a combination of annuities that pay immediately and indexed life insurance. So it sounds boring, right? But here's what it means. They get a check for $4,000 every month, whether the market's up 30% or down 30%.
And that's peace of mind.
Yeah, here's the beautiful part. They also had $300,000 left over for growth. So since they didn't need that money for living expenses, they could invest more aggressively. So in the 5 years since they've retired, that $300,000 has grown over $500,000. So
So basically, they're living better in retirement than they did while they were working.
that's their words, not mine. And and they say they sleep like babies every night because they don't have to worry about that.
Right. Kevin, I can already hear some of our listeners thinking, this sounds too good to be true. What are the objections you usually hear?
Yeah. So the biggest one is, Kevin, I've always heard that annuities are bad investments. And you know what? They're right.
Wait, what?
Annuities aren't investments, Matt. They're insurance contracts.
Ah,
Everybody misses that. So you're comparing an annuity to a mutual fund is like comparing car insurance to a savings account. They serve completely different purposes.
so it's not about the return, it's about the guarantee.
Yeah, exactly. So when you buy car insurance, you're not hoping to get a return on your premiums, right? You're hoping you never need it, but you're glad it's there if you do need it.
So what about fees? I've heard some annuities are expensive.
Yeah. So some are, Matt, and that's why you need to work with someone who understands the difference between good products and expensive products. But here's what's interesting: most people never calculate the total cost of managing a portfolio for 30 years.
So let's break that down. What do you mean?
So if you're paying 1% annually in management fees on $1 million portfolio, that's $10,000 a year. So over 20 years of retirement, that's $200,000, and that's assuming your account never goes down in value.
So you might pay less for the guarantee than you would for the uncertainty?
Often, yes, but the real value isn't financial, it's psychological. That's where most people miss. It's how much peace of mind. How much is peace of mind worth to you?
Right. Well, what about the people who say, I don't want to tie up my money? I hear that all the time.
Yeah, I get it. Americans hate the idea of losing control, but here's what I tell them: you're not losing control, you're gaining certainty. And uncertainty is the enemy of retirement.
Because you can't budget for I hope.
Yeah, actually, if you didn't have car insurance, you're driving to work every day, you're hoping nobody hits you because now what are you going to do?
Right. Or you
Right?
hope you don't hit somebody
Or
else.
you know, somebody
That's
else,
way
right? And now
worse.
they're going to take your house from you. So that's why everybody buys the insurance. So you can't call on the electric company and say, well, the market was down this quarter, so I'm going to pay half my bill. We'd love to be able to have that negotiating power.
That would
They
be
don't
nice.
care.
We would hate it when the market's up, though.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it seems like our utility companies, they raise it regardless.
Yeah, depending on the S&P
Well, we could have
500.
another hurricane, so we're going to go ahead and charge you more because it could happen.
Yeah, and if you wanna know what the electric company is doing with your money, they're buying insurance contracts, just so you know.
Yeah, right. Big
So,
investment.
Kevin, if someone's out there listening right now thinking, "I need to do something about this," what would you tell them?
So Matt, time is the one thing you can't buy more of. You know, every day you wait, your options get more expensive and less flexible.
So, what do you mean about that?
Well, so insurance companies base their rates on your age and health. So, for example, a 55-year-old in good health has options that a 65-year-old doesn't. And a 65-year-old has options that a 75-year-old doesn't.
Well, what happens if someone is listening and they're already retired?
Well, it's not too late, but the strategies change. So instead of building an income plan, we're often fixing an income crisis. So it's more expensive and more complicated, but it's still possible.
So, what should people do right now?
You know, first stop hoping and start calculating. Figure out exactly how much guaranteed income you'll need to cover your essential expenses, not what you want, but what you need.
How do they do that?
It's pretty simple. You take your current monthly expenses and then you multiply it by 0.08. And most retirees need about 80% of their retirement income. So
If they're making 100 grand a year, they need about
that's
80,000 in
right.
retirement. Okay.
So here's the key: figure out what portion of that needs to be guaranteed, right?
I want it all guaranteed.
Right. Love it.
So basically, if I need 5,000 a month and I know Social Security will give me 2,000, I need to guarantee that other 3,000.
Yeah, exactly. And that's when you can be aggressive or conservative as you want with everything above that. Right.
Because you already got the
'Cause
basics
you got your
covered.
base,
Okay.
you got your base needs.
So, Kevin, where can people go to learn more about this?
All right.
Is there somewhere out
Yeah,
there?
there is. And you can go to planliferight.com. We've created a free retirement income calculator that will show you exactly how much guaranteed income you need and the most efficient way to create it.
And it's not just a calculator, right?
No, what we've done is we've also included some case studies showing exactly how real families have implemented these strategies. You'll see the good, the bad, and the ugly because this isn't about perfection, it's about protection.
Well, how long do you think that'll be available?
Well, so we update it quarterly. So if you're listening to this episode when it first comes out, you got about 8 weeks before we refresh everything with new case studies and current rates.
Well, Kevin, this has been eye opening. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, Matt. So, you know, I've been doing this for 25 years, and the biggest tragedy I see isn't people who didn't save enough, it's people who saved plenty but didn't plan strategically.
So they did everything right, but still ended up struggling.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be that way. The information is out there, the tools exist, the strategies work, but you have to be willing to challenge what you've been taught, think differently about retirement.
So if you're listening right now and you're ready to stop hoping and start planning, go to planliferight.com, get the calculator, read those case studies, and see what a real retirement income plan looks like.
Yeah, and remember, retirement isn't about having enough money, it's about having enough guaranteed income to live the life you've earned.
Thanks for listening to Plan Life Right. I'm Matt Floyd.
And I'm Kevin Ross. Until next time, remember, life happens fast. The question is, will you plan life right?
Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if this episode helped you see retirement planning differently, share it with someone you care about. We'll see you next week.